Hi, guys. Welcome back to my podcast. If you're tuning in from the trailer episode, and welcome to my podcast. If this is the first episode you're tuning into, this is What Are You Doing, Dem? With me, your host, Demi, whatever you want to call me. Today's episode is very near and dear to my heart, and it is about de-influencing New York. And quite frankly, I should have I can't speak English. I should have recorded this like a week ago. But I was really sick when I recorded the first intro episode. I feel like I sound snotty even in the recording. And I have this weird lingering cough from that sickness. So I put off recording this and in hopes that it would go away. But I can breathe. I don't sound snotty anymore. So if there are weird gaps in this, I probably was coughing. Bear with me. But yeah, okay. So today's episode, again, very near and dear to my heart. And it is about de-influencing living in New York. And it's so funny because I put it off also because I was anxious, but it's weird that I was anxious about recording this episode solely based off of the fact that I feel like I've complained about New York to new people I've met more than I have the past 6 months. Like this last month, I've just been denouncing New York basically. But yeah, I just want to kind of go over, I guess, the glamorized image people have of moving to New York versus the reality. And I'll probably share a little bit of my personal experiences, debunk a little of those social media myths of, the perfect, quote unquote, perfect New York City life, and hopefully give some advice for people who do want to move there. I want to give a disclaimer. I don't hate New York. Like, hate such a strong word, but I do think it has its faults, and it just wasn't for me by the end. And I don't know. When I moved, I was so grateful and so happy to be moving, but I can't even lie and be like, I didn't feel a bit. Like, I was doing things on my own terms when I moved, but it just felt, oh, I should have stayed a little longer and I had something to prove to New York, which I didn't. But I've genuinely never been happier to not be living somewhere. And I do think I learned a lot whilst living in New York that I've taken with me. And genuinely, I feel like that whole, like, if you can make it in New York, you can make it anywhere thing, it really does apply. If you could hack it there for 3 years, like, you will have an easier time experience everywhere else, in my opinion. So let's launch right in. I'll talk a little bit about what inspired me to move to New York. And I'd always known I wanted to live in New York City. I'm a city girl through and through. I grew up in Lagos and a little bit in London. And then I went to a boarding school in Pennsylvania for a little bit. That's a whole separate episode because what a time. But I always knew I wanted to go to NYU as well. Since I was like 13, 14, I'd watch all these. It was like really such a thing back then, all like the teen movies, like everybody went to NYU. And I just knew New York's my favorite city back then, and I want to go to NYU. So that was always my dream school. Obviously, I changed what I wanted to do. I think at first I wanted to go to Tisch and be an actress. Then I was like, I actually don't want to be perceived, and I want to do psychology. So I figured that out. I applied to NYU. I got in. Maybe I'll do a whole separate episode on getting into NYU because that was like a whole wild ride as well. My freshman year at NYU, I was away. I was in Florence the entire year, and I met my friends there, my best friends. And then we moved back to New York our sophomore year. And so I was in New York my sophomore year of college, and it was mandatory we had to stay in the dorms because I think it was like a weird rule, like where you had to like live your first year on campus. So we had to stay in the dorms, and I stayed with I had two roommates in Florence. One of them is a native New Yorker, so she stayed at home, I think. And then my other roommate and I roomed again, and there was like a couple other girls in our suite. So we had the suite, and obviously with our luck we got the shittiest apartment NYU had to offer. If you're listening to this and you go to NYU, it was Lafayette. Yeah, Lafayette is not the greatest dorm. They're like really nice dorms, like Gramercy, the one on Union, I don't remember what it's called, but yeah, just Lafayette was not it. It was not a great dorm. We had a girl stalk us, like fully stalk us, got a school sanctioned restraining order. Again, separate episode. I'll get into all that. But yeah, NYU is a time, and like Lafayette was awful. I hated the area of New York we're in. Chinatown just isn't one of my favorite areas. I love the food, and the stores and the life, but living in Chinatown was just a little stressful. And then our dorm was right next to a homeless shelter, which is fine. Like, obviously, like, I know homeless people need somewhere to go, but when the homeless shelter closed or was at capacity and there was overflow, the leftover, and it was usually men, would be like left out. And they were just kind of creepy and would catcall. And there were a couple incidents. There was a lot of security. It was just a lot. Okay, Lafayette was a lot. And when I finally moved to the city, I hated the dorm. But again, a lot of my friends were in that building. It was one of the biggest dorms. So it wasn't that big of a deal. I learned to take the bus to school, the subway, and it was like my first in New York. And I really loved it. It was an adjustment, but it was a manageable adjustment. It wasn't like the end of the world or anything bad. I think the worst thing that happened sophomore year was I didn't realize how much seasonal depression was going to hit me in New York. Actually, that was a lie. The worst thing that happened is the weird roommate stalking situation. That was just like inexplicable. I have to do a completely different episode. But anyway, that happened. Lafayette again just wasn't a good dorm. There was like mold growing on the walls. Like overall, just a really crappy dorm room, or like suite, whatever you want to call it. And so, yeah, I decided to live with my two best friends, Maggie and Nova. Shout out them. And I think our first apartment was in the East Village. And guys, looking for an apartment in New York is one of the most traumatizing things a person could voluntarily put themselves through. It's just so intense and it's so cutthroat and competitive. And the landlords take the piss because they can. And it's only gotten worse post COVID because during COVID, a lot of people that lived in New York obviously moved out for lockdown. Like our apartment, for example, we left thinking COVID was going to be like a 1 or 2 month thing, and then ended up having to hire like a moving company to remotely move us out and just put our stuff in storage. Super unexpected. So a lot of people did stuff like that. And the landlords and the building managers, buildings, whatever, all wanted people to obviously live there. So they reduced rent a lot. A lot of buildings were offering like, 2 to 3 months free rent, things like that. So a lot of people ended up moving into New York during lockdown. Maybe they didn't mind locking down New York. That seems like a nightmare to me, hence why I left. But a lot of people moved back in. And then when COVID or lockdown was over, I should say, all the people that moved out moved back. So there's like a shortage of spaces and apartments now. And I kid you not, landlords were doubling up, as in teaming up to show like 1 bedroom flex apartments. And if you don't know what a flex apartment is, it's basically like a 1 bed, and then we turn the living room into another bedroom. And so again, they're not like huge apartments. The commission on it isn't huge, but they're teaming up because there's just not enough space. And so we missed, well, when we were living together then, we missed that rush. So, we got a nice-ish apartment eventually, but the process of finding it was horrifying. I remember being in like classes, end of the semester, and just like being on Street Easy, and that's how people in New York, majority of people find their apartments. You like go on Street Easy, you put in like your qualification, like whatever, the things you want, a 1 bed, this much rent, washer, dryer, whatever. And I guess you can call me bougie if you want to. If I'm paying $3,000, not on my own, with roommates at that time, if I'm paying that much money and we're paying $3,500 or $4,000 for an apartment, I think, there are some necessities that I just were needed. I wanted a washer dryer in building, it didn't have to be in unit. I wanted a dishwasher. I really wanted a doorman. I really liked doorman buildings for the longest time, but that wasn't a non-negotiable. I think it was really just having laundry in building and having a dishwasher. And we were going to like see all these apartments. Some of them were really shitty. They look good on the Street Easy stuff, or they mislead you and they put in a random apartment, and then you go there and it like sucks. It's not what you expected. And I remember begging the real estate agents we were seeing and be like, please hold the apartment when we were trying to get out your documents. A lot of the times you need to make, I don't know, like 30 times the rent or something insane, maybe even more than that. So you'd need the guarantor, and like when you're trying to get your application in, it would just be crazy. And again, it gets a lot worse, but even then, I remember we found this apartment we really, really liked around St. Mark's, and we were like at the viewing, at the showing for it, and somebody put in an application without even seeing it, like while we were at the viewing. And it was so sad because we were like back to our drawing board and we saw, sometimes the outside would be cute and they'd have all our things, but it was just such a tiny apartment. Like some of them had rooms with no windows, which I don't even know if that's legal in New York, but yeah, some really interesting, like one place we saw, the bedroom, like I couldn't open the door into the bedroom all the way because of where the bed frame was. Just absurd things like that. And the rent is still gonna be like around $3,000 to $4,000 for this like crappy little apartment. On Mini Leaks is like a white fridge, just stuff like that. I was being a bit bougie sometimes, but just I want a nice apartment if I'm gonna live somewhere. Like I know myself, and home is such a big deal for me. I love to make my apartments cozy. It's like always my biggest thing. So yeah, our first apartment wasn't bad. It was like a cute two-bedroom flex in the East Village with the doorman building. It was like 190 East something. It was like a nice apartment. I remember we'd go to Tompkins Square Park because we could walk to school. So, but we'd go there to the park and then we'd see like Emily Ratajkowski, however you say her name, like walking her dog and like with her husband and stuff. Like it was like a cute little apartment. We go get bagels and I started going to Pilates like back then. It was like 2019. Like it was just like a nice little apartment. So yeah, like I still was loving New York. You know, it was a whole new, I just felt like it was like a whole new vibe. I like the train station a lot more. Getting to NYU is easier. So yeah, first apartment was cute. My second apartment in the city, when I moved back from COVID, I lived with this girl. I'm not gonna say her name just for privacy, but yeah, not the vibe at all. So first of all, we got an apartment. I wanted to live in the East Village again, but her parents and like her were like, "Oh, it's not safe. Like we want to live somewhere safe." So we moved to FiDi. FiDi is essentially the financial district, and we picked an apartment on a nice street. It was a cute apartment actually. It was like a high rise, floor to ceiling windows, and it was a one bedroom flex. So there was one true bedroom, and then the living room kind of got turned into a second bedroom. And it was one of those, we got it for a good price because I think they gave us like 3 months free or something. So there's like a net price, whatever, whatever. So when we were deciding who was going to get what room, her and her mom were super adamant that she wanted the true room, like the real bedroom. And obviously I kind of wanted it, but I also didn't want to pay out the ass. I was like, it's fine. You can have it. I'll take the flex room because the flex room had full, because it was a living room, it had full floor to ceiling windows, and I really liked that. We were super high up, we're like on the 49th floor or something. But in New York, it's like normal if the rooms aren't even, whatever, you don't split the rent right down evenly if somebody else has like the bigger room. And so we'd agreed upon that. And this is just like like one of the strange moments, and like living with people is not my personal vibe for the most part. So that's one of the things I don't really love about New York. But she, like 3 or 4 months in, was like, "Oh, you owe me rent." And I was like, "What are you talking about? I owe you rent." I'm like, huh? And yeah, she's like, "You owe me rent. We should be splitting it even, and you haven't been paying it even." I was like, "First of all, why are you telling me this 4 months into us living in this place? And second of all, why would we split the rent evenly if you have the bigger room and you have a huge closet and I had to use the outside hallway closet, like the cook closet, basically?" And she was like, "Yeah, but blah blah blah." And I was like, "Okay, fine. We can. I don't mind paying even, but like halfway through the semester, I want the true room." I was being petty, but I was like, "I want the true room if that's the case." And she's like, "Well," and I was like, "I'm not. There's no scenario in which I'm paying the exact same amount of you to have less space." And beyond that, because this isn't a person that I knew, she was like, I knew her from class. Living with somebody, if you don't know them, is can be such a downer and like an energy drainer because there are so many little things like having a roommate in New York that stressed me out. And she would have people over and not tell me, like guys over at night, which is fine. And if anybody that knows me knows that I like to walk around in a t-shirt. I sleep in a t-shirt. If I'm at home, I'm gonna wear a t-shirt, just a t-shirt. That's my thing. And sometimes I like wake up in the middle of the night and go get water, and there's some random dude in our kitchen. There's like I didn't know was there, so I was like, "Hey, do you mind just telling me when you have people over?" That was an issue. It was still COVID time, so we weren't meant to be like having people over, having parties and stuff like that. And she had like, 3 girls staying with us. Didn't tell me they were gonna be staying until the day before. And again, we're sharing a bathroom, it's 5 of us to one bathroom. COVID's going around. It was just a lot. She was like oh, strange roommate, and I didn't like living with her, but like we made it to the end of the year somehow. That was my second apartment in New York. And then my third apartment, I really liked it. This is the last place I lived in before I left New York, and it was in Stuytown. So I went back to the East Village. And Stuytown is rent controlled, which was nice. It was still expensive, but the apartments are huge. I know Stuytown's like a controversial place, and people really don't like it. I personally loved it. They had a little Stuytown market on the weekends and movie nights. They put up like a big projector and people could sit in the garden. And then Kieran Culkin lived in Stuytown as well, so I'd always see him around with his wife and kids. They were super chill. He just walk around the fountain in Stuytown barefoot with his kids. So I really liked all my apartments. Once I left Lafayette, I liked most of my apartments, but finding all of them, I wept. I wept tears. I'd run from class to listings sometimes in between my classes to go see apartments. It was very stressful. So just another layer of stress in New York. I hate the subway. It's gonna be like a quick subway tangent, but the New York subway is convenient, and I liked that I could get from point A to point B in theory easily, but there was just always something going on. Like there was always some reason for a delay, or like a crackhead is punching people in the subway. There's a woman that was like literally punching people. I think it was like Union Square, and I like watched her punch somebody once. Or like a bomb. There's just like always something going on in New York. And if you're a person that doesn't like that, 3, 4 years in, at first it's haha, like my New York moment, like so much is happening. But 4 years in, I was just like, man, I want to go to the grocery store and I don't want to see a man walking his giant pig. Like I just want to go buy bread and go home and not have it be like an exciting of, you know what I mean? So that was just a lot. Like New York was a lot in that sense. Social life wise, I had fun. I had my same friends from NYU. Were locked in for life. They're gonna be my best friends forever, but I kept them all throughout my time there. I had a couple of friends from different classes I took, high school, just different things. I met people. I had a decent social life, but again, coming from Florence, where drinking age is 18. I'm in a foreign country. There was this amazing club called Babylon we would go to all the time. I partied a lot during my freshman year. And I did it in Germany and Italy and Spain and all these different countries like Paris. So I had a lot of fun. And when I moved to New York, having to use a fake ID was so startling. So nobody really went out for our sophomore year. We didn't have IDs. I think all my friends got their IDs from ID God. That was a thing. They'd send in pay through Bitcoin. It was really sketchy. And I got mine. I love my mom. My mom helped me get my ID from Nigeria. So it was a real driver's license from Nigeria. Just had a fake age on there and she shipped it to me. And that was what I was using to go out. So I never had an issue. They never checked or really cared. It was a foreign ID. They couldn't scan it. And it was a real ID. So I got in pretty easily, but all my friends, I remember once Maggie and I went out to this bar near our house and they like bent her ID. It was so rude. He was like, "This is fake." And he cut it. He's, "You can have it back or I can call the police." And we are just like, "No, it's fine. We'll go." We went home. So yeah, sophomore year wasn't it? And junior year, I kind of went out. Not really. It was more like apartment. COVID was happening. It was more like apartment get-togethers. That was cute. And then senior year, again, not really. I didn't really go out that much. I just didn't really go out while I was at NYU. I think after graduation I did a bit, but even that, like going out in New York is fun, but once you've kind of done it a couple times in Manhattan, it gets old. I just wasn't a fan. There's only so many times I can go to the same places, or what is it, like Mr. Purple? There's just like a couple places like pianos, like all these Lower East Side bars. And again, I used to carry a taser around with me because guys would just be like freaks when we were out. So yeah, social life wise, New York is good. It can feel a little isolating, and I think I self-isolated a lot towards the end of my time there by choice. I needed it, but I know that's something that people really complain about is it almost feels there's so much happening in New York all the time that it can feel really, really lonely, and you can have a weird, never-ending sense of FOMO. And again, I'm really happy I got to kind of skip through most of that. Even post college, when I graduated at NYU, I made friends with one of my coworkers from this awful company I worked at. Again, separate episode. but her name is Halen. I love Halen, and she kind of brought me into her friend group, and I was hanging out with them, and it was just really fun. I always had something to do, and it wasn't always a club. Sometimes you go to the park and sip and paint and have picnics, and they did Friendsgiving and all this cute stuff. So social life wise, if you are open to kind of meeting new people and you're a friendly person, you can make New York work. You might still feel lonely, but you can it's a struggle to meet genuine people, but it's not impossible in New York. Professionally, New York is good opportunity wise, but no matter how much money you make, like I remember I went from making like a certain amount to having a higher base salary and then working commission based. And I closed this like with the awful company. I closed a huge deal, made a ton of money, and I was able to live alone because I was paying all once I graduated school, I was paying my rent myself. And even as your salary goes up, your cost of living goes up with it. Just like it just happens that way. So it just feels like you're never making enough money unless you're like filthy rich and you move to New York. It just feels like you're never making enough money. It's always a struggle. And that can bring on such emotional highs and lows to always be in survival mode. So I left that terrible company, and it had just shaken me up. I'd gone through that. I'd gone through a weird relationship, situationship thing. It just took such a toll on me mentally. And so I needed peace and quiet. And I wasn't going back home. I wasn't like going to go see my mom. I didn't come back to Lagos for 4 years or 3 years, 3.5 maybe, from like 2020 to like end of 2023 when I moved. And when you're having emotional highs and lows in New York, the highs are really high and the lows are so, so low. I definitely had my moments of like triumph in New York, like graduating. NYU is one of my favorite. We didn't have actual graduation because COVID, but so much fun. Our graduation photos went not viral, but like people really reposted them at NYU. We had so much fun with it, and I was so happy. I was like, I'm never gonna be this age having this moment with such a great group of friends with, my girls. So their little excursions we went on. I think I ran into Frank Ocean on the street one time. I met a lot of my favorite celebrities, or you just see things. There's so much opportunity and stuff going on. But when you were having your lows, it was just so isolating, and it felt like, you couldn't catch a break. And I remember being sick was awful when I lived alone because you don't have parents or like your friends. I lived alone. Maybe if I had a roommate, it'd have been different, but I'd be sick and like shivering, and I'd either have to like haul ass out of bed, and maybe it's like freezing cold middle winter and go get stuff from like Target and Theraflu or like whatever, or Uber Eats myself, Postmates. Sometimes my mom again would send me stuff, but for the most part, like it was just like a bit of an isolating experience, and it can be overwhelming. I think New York was ranked one of the most anxiety inducing cities, or the number one most anxiety inducing city to live in. So if you're an anxious person, which I very much so am, it just gets to be a lot. Taking the subway becomes a stressful experience. And I remember one time I was coming back from the Bronx. I don't remember where I went to go do my braids. It was like somewhere I wasn't used to. I was still early on in my time living in New York, and I got in an empty subway car, which, guys, if you don't know, you're not supposed to. If the subway car is ever empty, there's a reason it's empty. Don't get in that subway car, guys. I got in, didn't really look. I wasn't being aware of my surroundings, which I usually am. And when the doors shut, I looked up off my phone, and guys, there was a crackhead, and I was trapped, and the doors had closed, and this person's like screaming and shouting and like making their way towards me. Thank God the train conductor saw me go in because he opened the doors back up and was like, "Get out, come in this subway car." I switched over, and then I was fine. But just again, stuff like that. Like sometimes the subways were dangerous, or you're late for work or you're late for class, and this sounds insensitive, and I don't mean it to because it is serious, but people would like jump onto the train tracks. And obviously everybody's mental health is super important. It's not something to joke about, but it was a little inconvenient because you would then be late, and there's only so many times you can tell your boss like, oh, this happened. And it happened fairly often. At least, I don't know, maybe I'm cursed, but it happened often enough, like where it was like a thing. And if it wasn't that, it was just always something. One time I went for brunch with someone. I was somewhere in Brooklyn, and we were having brunch outdoors, and there was a commotion over. I'm so bad with locations and names of places, but it was like the river. Like that kind of divides Brooklyn and Manhattan, and they're pulling a body out of it, which I did. I we got up and we went to go look, but that's nuts. My final year there in the city, there was a serial killer, and they finally caught him. He didn't live in New York. He lived in Jersey, but he was like murdering prostitutes around East Village. It was just a lot. Again, just like such a nuts thing to be like casually happening and like explaining to people like, oh, this is happening. And there are so many instances of situations like that. And it that aside, it just feels everyone's always hustling and you kind of do have to keep up with the hustle and bustle of the city, and it makes slowing down feel impossible. So if that's a thing that you want or crave is like a slower life, Manhattan is just not the place for that. New York is not the place for that. I will say, I think if I'd moved to Brooklyn as I'd wanted to, I really wanted to live in Bushwick for a bit, but none of my friends were in the area, and I was like, it's so far. I think if I'd moved to Brooklyn, I might have stayed a little bit longer, but I didn't do that. I stayed. And, the unspoken wins, I'd say about New York is you are gonna learn independence like you wouldn't learn it anywhere else. There's just a level of resilience you develop from living in the city, accessibility to anything, anytime, which is great. Anything you need is at your fingertips. You're meeting people from all over the world and all over the country, and you're getting just a very cosmopolitan experience in that sense. I love fall in New York, going to Central Park or really any of the parks. They have the cutest winter, like Christmas market, Union Square. I used to go every single year and I'd get all my friends their Christmas presents from there, and there's hot cocoa and desserts and live music. So like that was all really really cute, really sweet. Lagos, let's see. Life quality in Lagos is a lot easier for me, and I understand that I'm coming from a place of privilege. So, you know, life is a lot it's still very fast paced. It's a huge city, but it feels slower to me than New York did. I have, cultural roots here, and not when I first moved back, I didn't have that much community because I went to an international school when I lived here, so we're kind of like isolated, we're kind of losers. But meeting new people, making friends, building that community here is nice. Like it feels, I have multiple citizenships, and I will say Lagos always does feel the most like home. Nowhere really feels like home to me, which is strange to people, but out of all my citizenships or my nationalities, I would say Lagos feels the most like home, so that's been nice. The nightlife scene is great. Again, I stopped going out in New York, and I have been going out almost nonstop for like a year straight since leaving. So different nightlife is just a lot of fun. The food's different. There's a lot of food places here, not always great, but they do okay in terms of variety. And there's a warmth that New York can't replicate for me. I love being at the beach. I love being by the ocean, and I get to do that whenever I'm here. I think wherever I end up moving next has to be, I have to have like, somewhat easy accessibility to the ocean, like maybe except London, but I figure if I live in London, it's like easy to fly around Europe, just go places with the beach when I have vacation. I like to give takeaways or advice about New York. I will say manage your expectations. New York is definitely going to challenge you, and it's not going to audit, like, it's not going to be an easy solve to your problems, but you will learn skills. Like, you'll figure out how to be street smart, and you'll get that. Like, I remember I developed, like, the thing New Yorkers do where they hate slow walkers. That used to piss me off my final year there, because I'd like, be speed walking to the gym or my Pilates class, and, like, I lived in a lot of touristy areas, and they're so slow. Um, but yeah, you're gonna learn new skills. You're gonna develop kind of the New York City life, lifestyle. It's just gonna be a norm for you, I'll say. Um, have expectations on your apartment. Look for apartments in places other than Street Easy. Facebook groups are such a good place. If you're buying furniture, there's like a tip, Facebook Marketplace. You'll find some really, really cute stuff. Move by yourself as much as you can. If you need movers, it's cheaper. I had a guy named Angel move me into my first apartment, and I found him on Craigslist. So yeah, get creative. And if you are living in New York and you're getting tired, you're not alone. I know a lot of people love it and it's, oh, like, why am I not living it? What's going on? But it's fine. Have your New York moment and then pack it up and leave when it's time for you to pack it up and leave. If you're a city person, try a different city. London's around. If you don't need the visa, Austin's around, Atlanta's around. There's so many other cities you can live in and try something different in. And I'm a big fan. I love traveling. It's like my probably my life passion. So it's always been a thing for me. And before you move, if you're moving to New York, please do your practical research. Please budget yourself. If you don't have a budget, there's so many budgeting apps. Next time I talk about it, I'll try and find some apps, but look them up. There's so many budgeting apps. I think your bank app sometimes will help you budget. Try and build a community before you get there, whatever that is, whether it's joining a club or a gym or just somewhere that you can meet people. If you're not going to school, get to know your coworkers. I got really lucky. Halen was an amazing coworker. I had other amazing coworkers, but I got really close with her. She literally adopted my cats and has them. He's taking care of them now. But yeah, make friends, build your community. You're gonna need it, and give yourself time to adjust to New York. Like I said, sophomore year for me was one of my hardest years in New York. I had 2 consecutive hard years, 2 good years, and then 2021 into 2022. Actually, I had a lot of hard years in New York now that I'm recounting, but give yourself time to adjust, redefine what success means for you in terms of living in New York, adjust your expectations, have good communication with your roommates, set out cleaning agreements if you need to, and label your food if you need to, and try and nip things in the bud before they get to be bigger than they have to be. Surviving New York is just so much easier if you like your roommate likes you, and that's not like an added stressor. Make your apartment feel cozy, make it feel like home. I think my best mental health wise times in New York were when I loved my apartment and it was cozy and it was somewhere that I wanted to be. Towards the end, I was losing my mind in New York. I'll just say that like really quickly. I remember I got cabin fever, which was weird because I never got that during COVID when I had to lock down, but I used to stick my hand. Like my final year in New York, I was living alone in Stuytown, but then Nova moved in with me because the rent was a lot and I needed some help. And so we flexed my living room into a bedroom for her. And I had explained to her, I was like, girl, like I have cabin fever. I'm like losing my mind in New York. But when she lived with me, she would see me stick my hand out the window. I'd have to stick my hand out the window and be like, okay, there's air. I'm fine. I'm not. I used to get so claustrophobic 'cause I couldn't see the sky. There's buildings everywhere. Or I'd wake up at 4 a.m. or 3 a.m. Not wake up, I'd be up still and be going crazy and just feeling like the walls were closing in on me and I'd have to walk around Stuytown in the middle of the night. And sometimes Nova would come with me. But yeah, what a weird and strange time. If I could give myself one piece of advice before moving to New York, I would say if I could go back in time, I would probably tell myself that it's okay to leave. I lived in the city probably 5.5 years, 5, 6. And I really could have left after 4. I could have left 2021, and that would have been a good kind of like wrap up point. And I kept holding on, just being like, oh, like, I think it was scary for me because a lot of my friends still live there, and it's like, where would I go? And then it became a thing where I was trying to like prove to myself I can outlast New York. And I think I did. I left on my own terms and I broke my lease and left when I was ready to. This is just not it's not the vibe, it's not it anymore. My life quality really did improve, so I kind of wish I had done that sooner. I'd have trusted my gut a little bit more. Other than that, I would give myself advice that I just gave you guys, which is picking good roommates and having good communication. I would have gone out in Brooklyn a lot more. I wish I had done that more. And, keep crossing the street for rats, which I used to do. They're huge rats, and I'd cross the street for them because they're not scared. I I ate out a lot, so definitely eat out. Take advantage of New York. I tell myself that again. And yeah, New York was a time. It's not anything I look back on and I regret. I don't regret moving there at all. I'm so grateful I did. I got my best friends from living there. I have a will of steel from living there. I could do anything. I would have the worst days of my life and I'd make it work and I'd go to work or go to classes and come out on the other side. So it was definitely a developmental, like just a key part of my development as a young adult and as somebody in their 20s. And I do think everyone should have, again, if you like cities, have your New York moment in your 20s. You deserve it. It's fun. But pack it up. By your fourth year, you're going to start getting tired. That seems to be the general consensus. So when you feel it's time to go, definitely go. That's my advice. And I really hope this has been a fun episode to listen to. It was a solo episode this time. The next one might be a solo episode as well, but then you will have a guest host for the next one after that. So I'm super excited. And please follow, rate, keep up with us. I'd love to hear everybody's take on the New York City dream. Have you chased it, left it? Are you still figuring it out? Let me know. If you agree with anything I say, let me know. If you disagree, let me know. If you have any questions, let me know as well. And follow us on Instagram. I'm going to be checking that more often. I also have a TikTok account. I keep saying this, but you can follow us on there too. But I mostly will be posting on Instagram for right now. But yeah, thank you guys. And I can't wait to see you all, not next week, but the following week. Have a great, great, great rest of your day, and kisses from me. See you soon. Bye.